Lo que van a ver y escuchar les dará una apreciación completamente nueva de todo lo que es posible gracias a la tecnología. Bienvenidos a Xertica Cloud Stories, un espacio de innovación, donde hablaremos de tecnología y conocerás la voz de las personas que están revolucionando la industria. Cloud Stories es auspiciado por Xertica, la empresa más avanzada en tecnologías cloud de América Latina. ¿Listos para este viaje?
El día de hoy empezamos con dos invitados espectaculares. Uno de ellos es Tony Safoian. Tony es el CEO de Sada Systems. Sada es el partner número 1 de Google a nivel global. Y el otro invitado es Orlando Solís. Orlando es el CEO de Xertica, partner número 1 de Google a nivel Latinoamérica. Así que empezamos con ellos ya, pero antes no te olvides de, por favor, seguir nuestro canal de YouTube, donde van a estar colgados todos los videos, todos los episodios de nuestro podcast. Te esperamos. Así que ahora sí, empezamos. Muchas gracias. Well, we're so happy to have you, Tony, in our first episode. Let's start. As you know, we are living in a time of change where companies had to accelerate the adoption of new technologies and especially cloud. You as CEO of Sada System, a company that implements cloud solutions with thousands of organizations in the US, what recommendations would you give to companies to take advantage of the benefits of cloud?
First of all, I want to say what an honor it is to be on with Xertica, who is legendary in the space in the Google Cloud ecosystem, one of the top partners globally in all the global packs. I've known Xertica for years, so it's such an honor to be with you. But also your first episode. I mean, that's like the opening act. So it's some pressure, but it's also a big honor. No, Alan, I think your question, the answer has changed a little bit in the last year and a half. I think that prior to the pandemic, there was definitely still a tremendous amount of momentum. There was nobody that was saying cloud is a fad or it's real or whatever. But I think prior to the pandemic, most traditional companies certainly saw digital transformation and cloud as sort of a nice to have thing that we will do sometime in the future. We'll take baby steps and we'll start slow. We'll do this little project. We'll do test and dev. We'll do DR. We'll do something, right? So we can say we do cloud. How about backup? We'll do backup in cloud, and we can say we do cloud. But because of just the complete change in consumer behavior, the way that people work, the way we service customers, that was forced and accelerated due to the pandemic, it really demonstrated that digital transformation is not optional, and you don't have 5 or 10 years to do it. In fact, if you don't create new ways to support and serve your customers, which all those ways require cloud technology, whether it's data, geolocation, high availability, amazing applications, wonderful UX, UI, so on and so forth. If you don't have ways of selling and servicing your customers digitally, that is an existential threat to your company. The pandemic proved that. And what I believe is, of course, people will start going back to being somewhat normal, but the new habits we created as consumers are not going to go away. We still will see doctors via telemedicine if we can, right? We will still do most of our grocery shopping through delivery if we can. We will still expect smart chat robots and instant customer service that we learned was possible through the pandemic. So some of these habits for customers are not going to go back. So customers need to be relevant in every channel, every way of serving customers. In person will come back, yes, but curbside and delivery and remote and app-based, that will not disappear just because the pandemic has ended.
Perfect, Tony. Thank you. Thank you so much. Orlando, what about Latin America? Where are we in terms of cloud adoption?
Well, thank you very much, Tony, for the opportunity to chat with you, to express and exchange ideas. I think adding up on what Tony said, before the pandemic in Latin America, there were more doubts about security, about the total cost of ownership, about how quickly can you implement some cloud solutions, and I think the pandemic helped us solve those doubts or move forward because you needed to, and we're seeing a great momentum. Maybe some startups they move faster, some industries move faster, but in general, I think we're seeing great opportunities in the collaboration space, people moving to virtual meetings and virtual work, in the customer space, of course, trying to serve customers in every channel and to have a 360 degree view of the customer, and the infrastructure modernization as well. I think the pandemic opened some opportunities related to savings costs in IT infrastructure, and the cloud has a lot of benefits, and as well in the data and analytics space. So I think for Latin America, companies are seeing they see more benefits and a clearer trend that the cloud is the way to move forward.
Perfect. That's right. Uh, Talking about Sada systems, Sada, I think, is the largest Google Cloud partner in the world, I think. Tony, why Google Cloud? How does Google Cloud technology help companies innovate and improve their business, in your experience?
We're the largest for 2018, 2019. We'll see if we can win it again for 2020. It's going to be very tough, but we just submitted applications, I'm sure, as did you. The deadline was
Yeah.
last week for the new awards, so we'll see what
Yeah.
happens. I think winning 3 times in a row is very difficult, Orlando. I don't know if you've ever seen it in any ecosystem. Winning 3 times in a row is very, very hard, but maybe we have some hope. But the point is that we chose this path. I think, you're saying we definitely chose to go all in with Google. We sold the Microsoft business unit, and we have seen significant growth, of course, accelerated by the pandemic, but in general, the demand for Google Cloud has never been higher. Not just GCP, but all parts of Google Cloud, Workspace, Maps, etc. I think the question is, what makes it special, and why we chose this path is there's 2 or 3 aspects. First of all, we definitely believe GCP, for example, the best technology. I think every technology company, startup, as Orlando was referring to, if you let engineers make the decision, they will choose GCP every time. Today. Maybe not 10 years ago, not 5 years ago. Today, they will choose GCP. The best network, the best latency, best global presence, all of that, right? Incredible platform tools, BigQuery, etc., like Spanner, just ridiculous technologies, right? The AI platforms, best in the world. The technology is superior. We believe that. And I think even for infrastructure, because they wrote the standards around Kubernetes, that if you think about containerization and even multi-cloud, Anthos, etc., they have the best, most customer-friendly approach and story, to be honest. So that's one reason. But the other reasons are, we remember in the Microsoft world and other software, traditional software world, that very often customers would buy or renew some technology that they had, and they would never deploy or implement the new capabilities. Or in fact, they would never deploy some of the new software that they bought. They had Azure credits, never turned it on. They own SharePoint, never use SharePoint, but they own it because it's part of EA, In the Google world, nobody ever buys technology, doesn't turn it on. It's never happened that somebody has bought Workspace and hasn't gone all in with Workspace, or bought GCP and didn't deploy GCP or Maps. That was amazing to us. Like, oh my God, every time they buy, they turn it on, they deploy. But the bigger question, and it took several years for us to see this, is what happens to this customer when, A, They have the courage to choose something new, because the easiest thing in the world is to renew your existing agreements, right? Like, no, everybody buying Google is choosing a deliberately different path, the harder path, to convince executives, to convince the CFO, to convince your engineers, whatever, right? You're doing something that's not renewing your existing IBM, Salesforce, Oracle, SAP, Microsoft agreement, Amazon agreement. It's already a huge, bold step. But then what happens when we implement it for you and with you, with your teams? We see complete transformations in our customers' culture, whether it's engineering culture with GCP or collaboration culture with Workspace, capabilities with geospatial solutions. Like, no customer is the same after they deploy GCP, Workspace, Maps, any of those things. They are different. That's not the case with a lot of technologies. You deploy some technology, the company's the same. Strategically the same, capabilities the same, speed the same, culture the same. Google, every time a customer deploys it, they are different. And I think that is magical to me.
I will add. We have seen in some customers, for example, they use Google Workspace in their personal side, in their homes. Their kids use Google Classroom. They use Gmail Calendar, and they need to use another platform, and that seems kind of old or kind of not that intuitive to use. I think that's a powerful argument. The tools are really intuitive. In the GCP world, you can learn by yourself, get trained, get certifications, grow in the ecosystem, and start moving fast independently. And also, I've seen compared to other technologies, there is a low cost of a starting point, or low cost to initiate a project, and you can move like in sprints and see value faster than in other technologies.
I agree with that. And our customers expect you to show value for $50,000 in 6 weeks, or you know what I mean, like, or $20,000 in 4 weeks. Like and with cloud you can do POCs that are very low risk for the customer, and I think that is possible in this new paradigm, which the old paradigm was not easy to do.
Definitely.
Talking about Latin America, maybe something else to add, how companies in the region are taking advantage of Google Cloud?
Well, I think we have some concrete examples. In Xertica, we work with more than 3,000 customers in their Google Workspace initiatives. So they are working from everywhere. Also, the data space, we have implemented around 15 projects of advanced data warehouse or data lake projects. That's something that is going to be relevant now in the next years, to help companies get more insights from their data. And as well, there's this year and the end of last year, a lot of companies in Latin America getting value from Google in the migration of SAP workloads to Google Cloud, getting some savings, improving performance. I think that's another concrete example that Google is giving value to the challenges that some Latin American companies are facing.
Great. Yeah, that's okay. Thank you, Orlando. Well, taking into account, Tony, Sada's extensive experience with customers from all industries, in the cloud, there are myths and realities. What recommendations would you give to Latin American customers who are taking their first steps in the cloud to achieve their expected goals?
Look, I don't know the market intimately, but what I can imagine is there's some parts of the US that don't look that different from the Latin American market, by the way, When the people say the North America market or the US market, they think it's all the same. Let me tell you, Bay Area Corp is very different than, Southeast Enterprise, which is very different than Western Canada Enterprise versus Michigan Corp. You know what I mean? Like very, very like Denver is different than LA, which is one of the reasons we've gone very regionalized in our sales and delivery strategy. So, but I know how it goes in the US. Definitely all the early adoption happens in Northern California, West region, then kind of the East goes next, then maybe South Central, and then it goes to North Central in Canada, like different orders. But as far as like cultural adoption of technology. So I imagine that Latam being somewhat more conservative with a lot of traditional companies, certainly some tech startups. It's a beautiful market now, very vibrant, lots of opportunity in a lot of ways. But you're also faced with, like for Xertica to prove relevance, for Sada to prove relevance, and for Google Cloud to prove relevance, we have to win the traditional customer, right? That's when we get the credibility. And I think, the advice to those customers, again, goes back to how we open this dialogue, which is you don't have forever to transform. And thankfully, because of Xertica's capabilities and how cloud economics works and how these consumption and subscription products are designed, we can create a case study, proof of concept, minimal viable product that is extremely low risk, that has clear boundaries of cost and technical risk and time commitment, just to prove what's possible in a small piece of a transformation project or moving a small piece of software from on-premise to Google. We can do this in a very low risk way. And by the way, based on the commercial engagement, some of this is going to be funded by Google. So there's not even a great financial risk, right, to this customer sort of trying what the world looks like with cloud. I think resisting the Google transformation journey or resisting cloud more broadly is a very short-lived strategy, and that it's much better. And we have great examples in Latam of retailers and other customers who've made massive transformational leaps because they went aggressively in the direction of the future. And I think any customer in Latin America who doesn't do this is, again, at risk of being irrelevant and being made irrelevant by all the startups that are competing for those customers and those value chains.
Great phrase, Tony. You don't have forever to transform. Do you have like trademark it or something?
We should say like you have 3 years to transform or you'll die. That's a new one. We should just use that.
One challenge associated.
How does that sound in Spanish when you say you have 3 years to transform or you'll die? Does it sound good or no?
Yeah, I think it sounds good in both languages.
People understand very well. Don't worry.
One challenge associated with cloud is that there's not that much talent available.
Yeah.
We're including, for example, in our proposals, a lot of training sessions. We develop a program called Xertica Academy to train young people from different countries
Awesome.
to include them in the Google Cloud ecosystem. What lessons have you learned in the States? How are you solving this challenge? What can you share us about?
It is absolutely true that there's not enough talent, and there won't be for the foreseeable future, 5 to 10 years. And Orlando, this is to our advantage in the ecosystem because the demand for this work will actually outpace the supply of capable people, engineers, partners like Sada and Xertica to do the work. We really have to solve for the execution. We don't have to worry about demand side, which is remarkable for us to have that luck. Like, oh my God, how many businesses don't have to worry about demand side? Very few. But that does make the challenge different. And You're talking about some of the great things you already do, and it's multifaceted for sure. One is fundamentally you have to make Xertica a best place to work. It has to be better, more fun, more exciting at Xertica than working at Apple, working at Google, working at Salesforce. Like, we're all competing for the same talent. And look, we can't pay more than those companies, every time. So we have to really make it a cultural mission to make it a fantastic place to work. All of our managers have to be excellent managers. The work people do is meaningful. We have to really take care of each other and train and up level and put people on career paths that they understand and have great benefits and flexibility and all those things, right? But a cornerstone of making a great place to work. So this is so we can get a sufficient interest and talent and recruitment capability. And Orlando, once we get people, we can retain and grow them, because getting them is just part of it, right? It's like, what about keeping them for 5, 7, 10 years? That's also very important. But to make part of making the best place to work, and part of the secret, Orlando, and accessing all the world's available talent, is also to become a very inclusive and equitable place. Diversity, equity, and inclusion have to be part of the cornerstone of your culture, such that everyone feels safe. You are a wonderfully welcoming place for anybody of any background, women, men, whatever gender preferences, whatever culture or religion, right? Whatever your situation is, you have to be welcome here, because not only more diverse companies are better companies, they're just better to work at, they're more creative, they execute better, but imagine creating an environment where women don't want to come work there. Well, that's half the talent pool you don't have access to. Like, that's terrible. That's a terrible strategy, right? And then the last part, which you're already doing, I'm so happy to hear, Xertica Academy. We have Sada University, similar idea. We have to take accountability, being your size, your scale, your relevance, your market impact. It's our job to source talent, not young in age, but young in experience, and get them here and give them a chance in 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 3 months, whatever, to become Google certified, which is the best paying engineering certificate in the world, right? To get them Google certified in GCP and then create a future for them that's a completely different path. So we get those 3 areas right, and we will be able to solve for the supply side problem that we will face for the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, and those comments you were saying about the cultural side, the inclusion, diversity, I think those are lessons for any type of company from any industry.
100%.
There's a scarcity of talent everywhere, right?
Yeah. And Orlando, and Alan, you know this. You've been around in technology for a long time. Tech companies were not good at this. We used to be terrible at inclusion, equity. We used to be not a great place for women to work. If you go to an Amazon conference 3 years ago, 90% white dudes, right? Like, that's not welcoming. So it's our job to mix it up. Absolutely our job to mix it up.
That's
Definitely.
okay. Totally agree, Tony. Now let's talk about a project that you are so proud of it, for its impact and value generated in the client business. It could be a Google Workspace or GCP project. What do you think?
We have so many great ones. Certainly, I'll talk about National Response Portal we built with healthcare, HCA, largest healthcare organization in the U.S. That was a response to the pandemic, reported real-time data across every part of the United States, and gathering different data from health systems so we can more accurately report the transmission and death rates. We made that available in a few weeks. Google helped us with funding. We got it That was amazing. It's still going. Nationalresponseportal.com. Sundar actually mentioned it on an earnings call, referred to it on an earnings call. I thought that was really, really cool last year. I'm really excited every time we make a difference with Workspace. Sony ImageWorks, most recently, that's a public story. They talked about how having Sony ImageWorks be on Workspace allowed them to all go home but still make movies, and collaborate with each other and have their production workflows function through the pandemic was really great. We have several other major, media companies that are going live right now on that. And even the ones that seem to be just money oriented, but they're important to customers, because as you do bigger cloud deals, that financial responsibility, financial controls, FinOps is as critical as DevOps, because otherwise our customers they don't understand the spend, can't save money by going on this journey with you on Google. They might stop, right? They might stop the investments. There was a great story by MakerBot about how they clearly saved 30% off of AWS going to GCP. We helped them with that migration. Those are just some of the ones, but we have a huge emphasis this year on more and more customer stories, whether it's through our own podcast or public, press releases or blog write-ups or white papers. We put out one that was, I think, 5 customers telling us why they moved from AWS to GCP. More of that we have, the more credibility we have as a company, and Google does it as an ecosystem. So you'll see more and more stories from our side. And of course, I encourage Xertica to put out as many customer stories as possible too. Helps all of us.
Thank you. That's a great. And what about you, Orlando? A project that you feel proud in Latin America?
Well, I think customer stories, customer success, that's the sense of our jobs, to give customer solutions to real problems and impact the lives of their people or their customers. We have as well a lot of interesting stories. I think one that had a lot of impact in a government institution in a country in Latin America. Because of the pandemic, the judiciary system stopped, and that was a risk that the law enforcement cannot be continued. Some people that were in jail might set free because the process cannot be continued in time, and we work with them and we help them to have virtual audiences to continue this process. So I think that was a real honor to help society in this relevant topic of their judiciary system and law enforcement. And there were like 1 million people positively impacted because of this project. We're really proud of that project, and we work in different governments from different countries, helping them innovate with Google technologies. And I think another stuff that we're seeing is in this future of work. We are all defining how it's going to be the new normal and the new way of working. Some companies that are using Google Workspace, they are now looking for more advanced features, so they can do everything from their homes. We help this company with their connected Google Workspace with GCP in order to connect to an ERP and ask for vacations and simplify some internal process with a chatbot to improve the employee experience. So I think that's another type of project that we're seeing a lot, and in the next years, my vision is that there are going to be really amazing stuff going on in the collaboration space.
No, Orlando, I have to say, there's very few partners that have capabilities across the Google Cloud portfolio, and I agree, like a lot of magic is possible when you bring it together. So definitely keep that up, because I think Workspace plus GCP is a very cool story that's just going to get better. So I'm talking like this peer group is very small. There's most partners globally just do GCP, for example. And those ones the old ones from Workspace didn't really build great GCP capabilities, so they're kind of pigeonholed. So definitely use that to advantage of your customers, and I think we can keep them for a very long time and keep them happy with Google for a very long time.
Yeah, and as you say, magic is gonna come in the next years using more Google solutions.
Definitely.
Great. Well, Tony, this is our last question. It's a podcast question. We ask this to every guest in our podcast. This is how did technology change your life? I don't know, maybe in a person or human perspective.
I had the fortune of growing up in my house where my father was a technologist. And I'm talking about in Armenia, Soviet times, where engineering and math was a priority, and that computer science was a division of the math department in university. You know? There was no computer science department. It was math, who had like one closet in computer science. So my father always brought like interesting, like here's a dot matrix printer printout. Here's what like they're building mainframe data centers and IBM 400s or whatever they were called. No, not the AS400. Like I'm talking about mainframes. And then he prioritized in my life always. When we moved to this country, to the U.S., we bought a house a couple of years after moving here, which I don't know how they managed to do that. But the first thing they bought, besides our beds, I think was like a $3,000 clone, IBM 386 clone, which is a fortune. We didn't have living room furniture, but we had this computer. So I was, early, and then he took me to computer fair, and I got set up with an email address and Unix, and we had like, I had internet and I had email and before HTML, navigating, the web in different ways. And I just fell in love with what was possible with technology very, very early. And I developed, because I lived with it and grew up with it because of its influence, an instinct for it. And I was supposed to become a doctor, which is a whole different conversation. But for Armenian immigrants, only being a doctor or a lawyer is acceptable. So you can understand that mentality. It's not too different from other Asian cultures and South Asian cultures, etc. But I was pushed in that direction. But with technology, when I chose not to go the medical route, I didn't become like a developer engineer, but I think I just have an instinct for it. Like I understand what it can do. I understand maybe directionally where it's going to go. And so thankfully, what we saw at Sada in 2005 and 2006 was the early indications that cloud was going to be a thing that was in one direction. It was not a fad that was going to go back in the other direction, but it's going to be transformational. And because we were so early, this tiny little company that was irrelevant in the grand scheme of things in any ecosystem could make a disproportionate impact because we believed and nobody else saw it. So, and now, of course, we have 400 people. We'll have almost 500 people by the end of this year. We have a huge number of stories with customers. We are providing a wonderful place to work, I believe, and people to have a career. We have an amazing board of directors. For an independent company, I'm very proud of the board that we have. And it's been everything to our lives. I mean, as an immigrant story, it's like the American immigrant story, like you read in the books. And I also am very grateful. I owe a lot specifically to the Google partnership, specifically to the Google ecosystem, to the leadership at Google from the past and the present. They've changed our lives as a family, but certainly allowed us to change the lives of hundreds of more people, thousands of more people through the work that we do.
Wow, thank you so much, Tony.
Thank you very much, Tony, for this amazing conversation, for sharing your story. I think there are a lot of lessons, a lot of interesting thoughts about the future, about your achievements, and it's a pleasure to have this conversation. Thank you very much for your time, man.
Thanks, Orlando. Appreciate it, my friend. And Alan, nice to meet you. I'll see you around at the Global PAX, and let's stay in touch. I'm happy to share notes anytime.
Sure. Let's keep in touch, man.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you,
Be safe.
Tony. Bye.